I stared at my reflection, almost unable to recognize the woman looking back at me. The gym sessions, the strict diet, and the cosmetic surgery had all paid off. At 42, I felt like a new person, someone who had shed the weight of 2 decades of routine and responsibility. But the physical changes were just the beginning. This was about more than looking good. It was about feeling alive again. I told myself it was all part of a midlife renewal, but deep down, I knew it was something more. The decision to transform myself came at the beginning of the year. Tom, my husband, had always been supportive, but somewhat detached. Our 2 kids, Emily and Jake, were teenagers now, and our life had settled into a predictable, if not comfortable, rhythm. Yet, something was missing, a spark that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I started going to the gym every day after work, pushing myself harder than I ever had. It felt good to sweat out the frustrations, to see the numbers on the scale drop. The pounds melted away, and with each lost pound, I felt a bit more like the woman I had once been. Tom noticed the changes, of course, but he didn't seem to grasp the urgency I felt. It wasn't just about losing weight, it was about reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried under years of motherhood and marriage. Then came the cosmetic surgery. It was a decision I made on a whim, spurred by a desire to feel young and beautiful again. Tom was surprised but didn't object. He always had a way of supporting me without truly understanding me. The results were astonishing. I looked at least a decade younger. Friends and acquaintances showered me with compliments, but it was Aaron's reaction that truly mattered to me. Aaron was the young, charming host at our favorite restaurant. At 24, he was everything Tom wasn't: spontaneous, adventurous, and impossibly handsome. I'd always enjoyed our banter, but as I started to transform, so did our interactions. Aaron noticed me in a way Tom hadn't in years. He made me feel seen, desirable, and alive. Before long, our harmless flirtations turned into something much deeper. It wasn't planned. One night, after another argument with Tom about something trivial, I found myself at the restaurant, seeking solace in Aaron's company. He was there, as always, with that easy smile and warm demeanor. We ended up having a few too many drinks, and he invited me back to his apartment. I didn't resist. That night changed everything. In Aaron's arms, I felt a rush of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. It was intoxicating, and I found myself returning to him again and again. I told myself it was just a fling, a way to feel young and free. But deep down, I knew it was more. I started to believe he was my soulmate, the person I had been waiting for all my life. Our secret meetings became the highlight of my week. Aaron was so different from Tom, so full of life and passion. He made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. I began to distance myself from Tom, spending more and more time with Aaron. He told me he felt the same way, that he wanted to be with me. It was enough to make me take the leap, to leave behind my life with Tom and the kids for a chance at happiness with Aaron. It was a risk, but I was convinced it was worth it. The day I told Tom I was leaving was one of the hardest of my life. His shock and pain were palpable. He begged me to reconsider, to think of the kids, but my mind was made up. I moved out that weekend, leaving behind the home we had built together for a new life with Aaron. After the divorce, Aaron and I moved into an apartment together. For a while, everything seemed perfect. We were like teenagers again, living in a bubble of love and passion. But cracks started to show. I began to realize that he was using me, that he wasn't the person I thought he was. The money I spent on him, the gifts, the expensive dinners, it all became a way for him to take advantage of me. My business started to suffer. The energy I once poured into my work was now consumed by my tumultuous relationship with Aaron. My savings dwindled, and I found myself in financial distress. Aaron's true colors became painfully clear, and the relationship that had once seemed like a dream turned into a nightmare. One night, after another argument, he stormed out, leaving me alone in the apartment. I sat there staring at the walls, the realization of what I had done crashing down on me. I had thrown away a 20-year marriage and the stability of my family for a fantasy that had crumbled into dust. I tried to talk to Aaron about our future, about the promises he had made, but he always found an excuse to avoid the conversation. He started staying out late, often not coming home at all. My suspicions grew, and I began to feel like a fool. The man I thought was my soulmate was nothing more than a manipulator, using my affection and my money for his own gain. The silence of the apartment was deafening. My thoughts drifted back to Tom and the kids. I hadn't seen much of them since the divorce, and the weight of my choices bore down on me. I decided it was time to try and make amends, to reconnect with the family I had abandoned. I called Tom, my heart pounding in my chest. He answered, his voice colder than I remembered. I asked if we could meet, and to my surprise, he agreed. When I arrived at the cafe, he was already there, looking older, warier. We exchanged pleasantries, but the distance between us was palpable. I apologized, trying to explain my actions, but he remained distant. He told me that the kids didn't want to see me, that they were hurt and angry. It felt like a punch to the gut. Desperate, I turned to Tom for help. I asked him to talk to the kids, to help them understand that I was still their mother and that I loved them. He agreed, but it was clear he didn't believe it would make much difference. The trust I had shattered couldn't be easily mended. I started writing letters to Emily and Jake, pouring out my heart and begging for their forgiveness. I sent gifts and messages, hoping they would eventually open their hearts to me again. But each time I reached out, I was met with silence. The void between us seemed insurmountable. Tom had moved on. I learned through mutual friends that he was seeing someone new, a woman younger and prettier than me. It stung, but I couldn't blame him. He deserved happiness, and I had forfeited my place by his side. My own life was in shambles. My business had taken a nosedive, and I was struggling to keep it afloat. Aaron was out of the picture, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I started seeing a therapist, trying to understand the choices I had made and the person I had become. It was a slow process, but I began to rebuild. I focused on my work, trying to regain the success I once had. I made small steps towards reconnecting with my kids, writing them letters and sending messages, hoping they would eventually open their hearts to me again. The scars of my choices would always be there, but I learned to live with them. I had lost a lot, but I also gained a new perspective on life. I realized that true happiness couldn't be found in someone else. It had to come from within. As I worked towards rebuilding my life, I held on to the hope that one day I could make things right with my family. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to keep moving forward. I had made mistakes, but I wasn't going to let them define the rest of my life. With each step, I tried to become a better person for myself and for the people I loved. Eventually, I met someone new. He was kind, understanding, and patient with my baggage. We took things slow, building a relationship based on trust and mutual respect. My kids remained distant, but I continued to reach out, hoping that one day they would see the changes I had made and give me a second chance. Looking back, I realized that my midlife crisis had been a catalyst for profound change. It had been a painful journey, but it also forced me to confront my deepest fears and insecurities. I learned to stand on my own, to find strength within myself, and to rebuild my life from the ground up.